Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really glad to see all of you at an in-person event. It's been a while, especially, yeah, it's really nice to be here with all of you today. And first of all, I just would like to say thanks to everyone at Esplanade for making this possible, as well as my publisher, Ethos Books, right there, and This Humid House, who designed this beautiful arrangement. Here you can see Agnes Joaquim's with exposed roots, and more orchids here. So my name is Zining, and today I'll be reading from this book, the Orchid Folios. And I thought that before I started reading, I would talk a little bit about this book because it's objectively quite a strange book. It's poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. So there's poetry on the craft of floristry and writing. There's a fictional story about a florist, and also it has a nonfiction thread about Singapore's history and Singapore's relationship with hybrid orchids, and also the history of Agnes Joaquim, which was hybridized by this lady named Agnes Joaquim. So I didn't always intend for it to be poetry and fiction and nonfiction. That would have been that's quite overambitious, I think. At first, actually, I wanted it to be a book of science fiction poetry. And the reason why I thought that was because I had encountered orchid diplomacy. So I don't know if you know, but Singapore hybridizes hundreds of orchids each year. And from these hundreds of orchids, they select about 51 to register with the Royal Horticultural Society in the UK. And that's about one new orchid hybrid per week in Singapore. And then many of these orchids are kind of used as diplomatic gifts to foreign dignitaries and to celebrities. So for example, there's an orchid, there's like a Biden orchid, and there's like a Shah Rukh Khan orchid and a Jackie Chan orchid as well. So I was very fascinated by this, and I thought it would make great material for science fiction. So I started writing science fiction, and this is not about the genre science fiction, which I truly do love. It's about how I was writing it. So I wasn't happy with the way I was writing it, so I decided to just put it aside and start over again. So I decided this time I would really, really look at the orchid. Now, try to understand it from all of these different angles, from biology to history, to Singapore's national history, to myth, to language, genetics, all of these. And as I started doing that, this book kind of started coming together bit by bit. And at first, I kind of envisioned it as a sort of museum exhibition on orchids. And that's why you will see a range of forms in here, from exam questions to advertisements to personal stories and to poems and dictionary entries as well. And as I started compiling this book, something even stranger happened. So what happened was this first-person voice started emerging. And this first-person voice was kind of like my voice, but also not really, because of how it was interacting with all of these different materials in the book. It started sounding more like the voice of a florist who works with plants. And I don't work with plants. I've unfortunately killed a number of plants, so hopefully one day I will be able to, hopefully one day I'll have green fingers. But as it is, this book is a book of fiction. So today I'll be reading, today I've selected poems for you from all three threads: poetry, fiction, and nonfiction. And and one last thing is, this is a book that's very much a book of many voices. So to help distinguish among the three different threads, I'm going to try to read it in three different voices as well. I was about to leave. Then I tripped, knocked over the books I'd stacked to make a stand for my phalaenopsis. The pot shattered. The roots were bare, coiled tightly around bark. It's overdue for repotting. I was surprised I felt nothing else. It's an old orchid, one I gave Mom almost a decade ago, before the store opened. My oldest orchid. It flowers still. One of the books on that stack, a dictionary, had fallen open. On the right was a morning glory, its indigo now sepia. On the left, a brown stain. I bent to pick up the dictionary, sent a flurry of flowers and leaves flitting to the floor. Mom used to bring me to the neighborhood park. The swings at the playground made small silver squeaks. On the way home, we would study the ground for blooms to press between pages. We had a vast collection, which I'd forgotten for years until now, when I find myself sitting on cold towel, sobbing amidst the foliage of a past life. Floristry basics, cuttings. A word is a cutting, a sentence, a bouquet. When the inflorescence wilts, scatter cuttings in a tub of water. Allow words to float as they absorb the new context into which they have been plunged. When I got up to repot my orchid, the sky was indigo. I unclipped the stakes holding up the stem. I dug into the roots. Mom taught me everything I know about orchids. Inside everything, the orchids, my hands, the freckled leaves of old books laid bare, were steeped in blue. I surfaced for breath, opening the door to warm air. Cars drove in low hums. Orchid, noun, 1. Orchid grew out of the Greek orchis, for tubers of orchids resemble testicles. Orchis, hybrid son of a nymph and a satyr, raped a priestess at a festival held for Dionysus. The fates sent wild beasts to tear his body apart. Orchis's father mourned and prayed the gods would make his body whole again. Instead, they took the deconstructed material of his body and rearranged it into a plant, flowering still. Floristry basics, roots. Take cuttings in early mornings when stems, strong with water, steadied by the memories of their roots. Cut at an ingle and mull the last arrangements while they drink from their new slants of severance. Most of my blooms, I know, die young. Some come in boxes already severed, their stems in individual plastic tubes. Others I cut myself, my left hand cradling the stem that my right snips with shears sterilized. There's no need to be wistful. Flowers shed. Orchid, noun, 2a. Greek symbolism is not always good for business. But the story can be tweaked. Learn to identify the beginning that best serves you. Prune it where it doesn't. Begin, for example, with Henry Ridley and our national flower for a local flair and a tint of colonial nostalgia. 1893, 5 years into his job as the director of the Singapore Botanic Gardens, Henry discovered a new orchid hybrid. He quickly took a cutting, had it sketched, preserved, and presented Agnes Joaquim in the Gardener's Chronicle, the respected horticultural periodical in London. People like to tell me floristry is a good job for a lady. The guy who came in yesterday didn't even say lady. He said girl. Girl. In his eyes, dimmed by those reflective Ray-Bans, my plants and I are one and the same. Trivial, domestic, primed for a life of objectification. Yes, I said. I play with lives for a living. Orchid, noun, 3a. When Henry, nicknamed Mad Ridley for his precision and fervour, first registered the hybrid with the Royal Horticultural Society in London in 1893, he had acknowledged Miss Agnes Joaquim as its creator. In this telling, you may choose to question Henry, in which case the plot would thicken in 1963 when Humphrey Morrison Burkill, then director of the Singapore Botanic Gardens, asserted that Agnes Joaquims were nothing more than a delightful accident of nature. For it would have been impossible for a local, much less a local woman, to have had the vision or skill to artificially pollinate an orchid. And certainly not before 1928, when Humphrey's predecessor, Richard Holtham, established Singapore's orchid hybridization program. Floristry basics, synonyms. Each cutting is unique, but that is not to say that despair is the only rational response to wilting. Look for a synonym, if necessary, in a catalog. There, they are novel, updated daily. Orchid, noun, 3b. In 1981, Agnes Joaquim was crowned the national flower of Singapore. According to the committee, its vibrancy, resilience, hybridity, and year-round blooming quality reflected the Singaporean spirit. By then, we had accepted that the hybrid was a natural. As this story goes, Agnes discovered the bloom one morning in her garden and, excited, brought it straight away to Henry. In her own story, Agnes's role was diminished to that of discovery. A new shipment arrived in store today. Words like lepak, sabo, teh tarik, Chinese helicopter, ang mo, local blooms I grew up arranging. In school, I was taught they were weeds. At the bazaar on Saturday mornings, after topping off our shopping trolley with a bloated bag of fish balls bobbing in water, Mum and I would stop by the florist stall to get some cuttings. Our feet, wet with water the aunties and uncles had splashed on the floor in the meats and seafood section. back home, the tissue around the flowers always smelled a little fishy. No fishiness in the box today, just the plastic and cardboard smell of newness. I come up with trendy arrangements which really are the old, made to be. Local cuttings are hot these days. A limited selection is now available in the World English Catalogue of the World English category of the Oxford English Catalogue. I can't help. No matter how many times I take everything apart, but repeat the same arrangements over and over again. It used to be so intuitive. But now I look at my cuttings scattered on the table and I don't know how to begin. Maybe I've lost it. Maybe I should have just been content with floristry as a hobby. Maybe I should just quit and go back to my job. But this is not something I can just leave. There's rent, and there are all these potted lives to care for. Each morning I check leaves for signs of thirst. In the store there is no rain, no morning dew. Occasionally the aircon drips. Mom saw the beauty in everything. In withered flowers, in millipedes, and me. I remember the day I received my first report card. I was 7. The form teacher, Miss Tan, told us to line up according to our class rankings, and I was 39 out of 40. The line unfolded from the smart end by the classroom door to my end in front of the teacher's table. Miss Tan kept walking to and from her table to get the presents she got for us, but as she worked her way down the line, the rewards shrank from a basket filled with toys and sweets to a small notebook, a pencil case, and finally to a wooden pencil which she pushed into my hands with a dirty look. I remember thinking that if I had felt terrible, the boy next to me must have felt worse. But when I turned to see what he got, I saw that it was the same pencil, the kind that I hated, which, instead of gliding across the paper, scratched. When our eyes met, I gave him the same look that Miss Tan had given me and walked back to my desk with my head held high. After school, I carried the report card home in fear. I gave Mom the card and watched her eyes move across the page and down towards the remarks. She could have done better if she tried. The sun was setting and the light on the report card grew increasingly blue. There's no need to cry. I know you tried, Mom said finally, to my surprise. Come on, didn't you say you wanted to learn how to report an orchid? When you take an orchid out of its pot, you must first loosen the root's hold on the moss. Late last evening, as I unravelled the braids of the shattered phalaenopsis, I saw how the ends were white and shriveled from neglect. You have to do it gently. It's like combing hair, Mom had taught me. And I remember her fingers running through mine and mine through hers until the final months when all of it started to fall. After she passed, I couldn't make anything stay anymore. No matter where I placed the cutting, no matter which cuttings I chose, no matter which form I tried, nothing felt right. In the end, I couldn't even send her off with an arrangement of my own. Floristry basics, growth. You may not reattach leaves or roots to a cutting. You may, however, grow from it a new plant which will blossom from memory. Orchids are too fussy. Can you recommend something easier? Although orchids are really some of the most adaptable plants on Earth, they're a cosmopolitan family capable of surviving on every continent except Antarctica. You can find them in all kinds of habitats, in the desert, on Arctic tundra, or on coral atolls, exposed to the salt of sea spray. Growing plants, Mom used to say, is not so much about management as it is about world building. The transformation of a place, a greenhouse, a concrete store, a humble flat, into a rainforest, shady and damp, or an alpine meadow, open and bright. Horticulture, the practice of nurturing plants for consumption or ornament, is as much a science of cultivating belonging, the building of a home. I see so many potted orchids discarded in the corridors of flats. Some have root rot, but most have roots still green and plump, draping in tangles. People seem to think that just because its stems are bare, the orchid is dead. Often it is simply dormant, resting, preparing quietly for the next bloom. But most people are interested only in the orchid's flower, its aesthetic, not its life. Orchids have their own timeline, flowering once every 6 to 9 months. My late bloomer, Mom used to call me. Floristry basics, bull. In English, we propagated words from cuts of the Pi word bull, meaning to thrive, until bull took root and grew new blooms. Blossom, blade, bless, blood, cauliflower, deflower, flower, flourish, florist, feuilleton, gilliflower, phyllis. This morning I snipped off the last blooms still hanging on Mom's phalaenopsis. The stems stand flowerless, but it will blossom again. For now, the moss is moist and new. The roots are learning to take hold. The smell of wet earth lingers in the air. Orchid, noun. 1. Begin again. More than a century after her death, Agnes was finally recognized as the creator of Vanda Miss Joaquim, which has since been reclassified as Papilionantha Miss Joaquim. The push to set the record straight began in the year 2000, when historian Nadia Wright published an article in the Malayan Orchid Review providing evidence that Agnes had hybridized the orchid herself. Nadia's research, along with Agnes's contribution, was dismissed as mere speculation, an unscholarly claim that wrongly accused male experts of gender bias. In 2015, Agnes was inducted into the Singapore Women's Hall of Fame for her hybridization of Vanda Miss Joaquim. However, it was only in 2016 when Agnes's great-grandniece Linda Locke convinced the National Heritage Board to conduct a historical review of the evidence that official sources finally amended their records. Not much is known about Agnes, except for the bare facts. She was born and bred in Singapore in the Armenian community. She won many prizes for her plants. She never married. She passed of cancer at 45. She was the first woman in the world to hybridize an orchid. After transferring the pollen of Hookeriana to Terrace, Agnes waited for the seed to germinate into a new life, which flowers still. The mother figure in this book is very much inspired by my own mother, who's right here. And some parts in this book are quite close to my own experience. For example, the one with me bringing my report card in fear. Instead of scolding me, my mom brought me to Escape Theme Park, which I had been begging her to do for an entire year. And that's something that has really stuck with me ever since. The other person who inspired the mother figure in this book, though, is my grandmother. And you know, my mom, she used to go to nurseries to get orchids for my grandmother. And usually they were purple because my grandmother liked purple and she liked orchids. And so that's where my personal connection to orchids came from. Unfortunately, she passed away recently. And you know, when she passed, I just couldn't help but think about just how incredible her life was, how she'd lived through the Second World War and, you know, migrated to a place where she had never been, and then lived through the incredible changes in Singapore over the years and finally passed away of COVID. But it also makes me think about how little I know about her history and her own story. Now, this book is about many things, but I think one of the things this book is about women who lived, as my brother says, honorable and ordinary lives, caring for the people they love, not necessarily because, you know, that was the only thing they could do, but because of gender roles, right? Yes, this book is about women who live those ordinary and extraordinary lives.